Well, hello, hello, hello. Hope everyone's doing well today.
So far,
Yeah, good to see you, Barbara. Good to see
thank you. There's Heidi, I think Roger, with Brian.
you. Well, what a day to be together. I hope everybody is doing fine. I know there's so much in our world that's happening right now, and certainly our prayers go out to all those who today are affected by COVID-19 and this second wave, the second wave that's coming around our country. Here in Los Angeles, we've had to uh, really start pulling back in many ways. There's rumors of perhaps having a curfew and other things like that coming. So
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know how it is in your area, but maybe you can share a little bit.
Our governor here in Arizona has not spoken much at all in the last month or so, but he's to have a news conference today. And personally, I'm expecting him to crack down a little bit more on our activities, especially going into the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah. Well, that's there. And where are you, Barbara? What part of Arizona?
I live in Chandler, Arizona.
Yeah. Well, where? Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Brian?
I live in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and our governor, part of the campaign that he ran on when he was elected 2 years ago was that he's anti-vaccine.
I see. Okay.
Which is absolutely wonderful to have in as a governor during a global pandemic.
Right.
Over the weekend, they announced that in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, there are no ICU beds available.
Wow.
And his response was to close bars at 11 o'clock and to order that people must wear a mask in state buildings.
Okay. Oh man. Wow. Okay.
Doesn't sound reasonable, actually.
Right.
I serve 3 churches, and I'm blessed with church councils who are filled with reasonable people. And at our combined council meeting tonight, we will be discussing canceling in-person Christmas Eve.
Wow. Yeah.
And it may be that we put it out there and make the final decision as we get a little bit closer, but the fact that we are actually discussing it, I'm proud of them. It's not an easy decision. I've said if we do, I will be in the sanctuary live streaming to whoever will be there. I'll just do my best to remember to mute my microphone so that when I sing, nobody has to hear my voice, because that's not a joyful noise.
I hear you. I hear you. Hi, Heidi. How you doing out there? Oh,
You're muted.
you're muted.
Just a minute.
That's fine.
My office has a, it has a window on the street, so.
Okay.
And people don't know. I'm sorry, the person doesn't, there's somebody here to ring the doorbell and, open the door. Let me just go tell them to open the door. I'm sorry.
Not a problem. So today, while Heidi's out there in New York City with someone.
Okay, all right, I'm back.
Okay, cool.
I think that since New York was so hard hit, now we're still doing really well compared with most of the country and COVID, but it's rising and rising. And even though it's not the way it is in other places, it's going in the wrong direction. And we presently are having in-person worship very limited numbers, very spaced out, everyone in a mask, no singing, no speaking as a group. And everybody has been, really like everyone's like followed that.
Okay.
And the people who come, even though there are all these restrictions, have still liked actually being with others.
Right.
There's other people who don't come because, for instance, some people really want to sing and they can sing when they're watching the live stream at home, but they can't sing, in church. But I'm struggling to figure out, like, I'm worrying about after Thanksgiving, who people, thinking, and then again, like what we're going to do on Christmas Eve. Like part of me thinks we should just make the decision and shut down so I don't have to like every week be like,
Yes.
so I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, we are in better, I'm certainly grateful that we're in a better situation than many places. And and everybody here, there's nobody here who doesn't wear a mask or anything like that. So.
Yeah. I mean, we did attempt to have a in-person service on Reformation Sunday, and that was not well attended, but most of our people, when we survey them, are all, I think it's like 80% of them or more are saying not ready for any kind of in-person. And so the church has spoken. So we just, and then all of a sudden the second wave has come through our area, and now even our idea or thought of gathering for Advent was thrown out the window. So now we had some in-person council meetings, and now we're going back to Zoom, right? We're going back to Zoom. So I just, with the holidays also coming up, you just don't know. So much going on.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, families want to gather. What do you think, Barbara?
Right. I mean, exactly. We don't know where everybody has been. And,
Right.
I mean, starting in Advent, we were finally able to have outdoor worship. So prior to that, we'd only been virtual. So now we're doing outdoor worship, very limited numbers and masked and so forth. But whether that can continue on to Christmas Eve, I don't know. I know that our pastors have been discussing having some staggered times during the day, Christmas Eve outdoors, but I can't imagine we'd be indoors.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. Go ahead, Heidi. You're going to say.
I was going to say, and it's too cold here to be outdoors.
That's true.
Right. Well, we couldn't be outdoors all summer because, it's like the fires of hell in Arizona in the summertime on the patio. So.
It's so hot in Arizona. You're right, huh? I know.
Yeah.
I know. I could imagine. Okay, so I have Heidi. Heidi's going to lead us today with a time of spiritual reflection on the scriptures. And I did get your attachment, Heidi. So let me bring that up and I could share it with everyone here. And again, today our heart will be centered around our 90-day plans and just starting to put that together, thinking about it. If you've already done some work, excellent. If you're still working on it, that's fine as well. So let me bring this up now. Let me share. Okay.
So what I would like to do, the last part, that's a song. We don't need to do that. What I'd like to do is read the psalm. Maybe we could take turns each reading a line. And then just prayerfully, will it be possible, Moses, at the end, after we read it, to see the whole psalm?
Sure. Yeah, I think so.
Because, so at the end, what I'd like to do is just prayerfully consider what line or phrase of the psalm, it's speaking to you today, and share that with us. And if you, and maybe share something of why that particular part of the psalm is speaking to you today. So I'll start, and we can just go around and read the psalm first. Transgression speaks to the wicked deep in their hearts. There is no fear of God before their eyes.
For they flatter themselves in their own eyes, that their iniquity cannot be found out and hated.
The words of their mouths are mischief and deceit. They have ceased to act wisely and do good.
They plot mischief while on their beds. They are set on a way that is not good. They do not reject evil.
Your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds.
Your justice is like the mighty mountains. Your judgments are like the great deep. You save humans and animals alike, O Lord.
How precious is your steadfast love, O God. All people may take refuge in the shadow of your wings.
They feast on the abundance of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your delights.
For with you is the fountain of life. In your light, we see light.
Continue your steadfast love to those who know you, and your salvation to the upright of heart.
Do not let the foot of the arrogant tread on me, or the hand of the wicked drive me away.
There the evildoers lie prostrate. They are thrust down, unable to rise. Okay, is that all? See if I can. Let's as close as I can get it all. Let me see. There you go.
Put on my glasses.
I know.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So what line jumps out, or what phrase jumps out to anyone, if you're willing to share?
Verse 7
Me too.
speaks to me because I need a place of refuge and calm. I've had one Sunday where I didn't lead services since well, I've had 2 Sundays where I have not led worship this year. One because I was at the ELC Youth Ministry Extravaganza out in California in January, and our Synod office offered to do all the virtual worship one Sunday for all of us, and I'm tired. I'm exhausted. But in Oklahoma, there's not there's not a deep bench of Lutheran pulpit supply, and so it's my congregations have been good in doing things to take some of the burden and some of the weight off, but there are just times where my prayer for the day is, God, help me get to the end of the day, and let me have a good night's rest to join the battle again tomorrow.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that.
So I was right there with you, Brian. I mean, that's the same verse that I honed in on. I've done pretty well through this period of confinement for the most part, and actually because of my interest, day-to-day activities involve a lot of outdoor things that I've been able just to keep on keeping on. But just in the last couple of weeks, I'm starting to feel weary and realized last night I slept almost 11 hours. I guess I'm getting tired and worn out. So.
Mm-hmm. I was first going to say the same line too, the same verse
Wow.
too. I feel like, well, today it's just, we have this boiler problem, and everything I thought I was going to do, instead I was dealing with the boiler, and then that just makes me feel more stress about the other things. But the other, so of course the sense of a refuge is very appealing, but I kind of feel like Brian, but I can't take a refuge. There's too much to do. But the other thing that struck me was the verse before that, the line before that, you save humans and animals alike, O Lord. I mean, our household, we have 2 cats. But I feel, for a lot of people, and for me and my family, animals, whether it's a cat or a dog or whatever, have been a real source of comfort, with their kind of unconditional love, and even just their bodily, if my cat, one of the cats just sits on top of me, just the physical contact with the cat is comforting. So I'm thankful that humans and animals alike are held in God's saving love.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. For me, it was I believe it was verse 5. It talked about your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. And it just reminded me of Psalm 121, right? I look up to the hills. From where will my help come from? And another way to describe that is you look up to the heavens. It's another way that it's been translated. So it just reminds me of whenever there is trouble, whenever there is pain, uncertainty, it's this reminder to look up. And as you look up, perhaps those clouds, those heavens, God, right, will lead us and will guide us and will comfort us and care for us. So I'm in a season where I'm just saying, God, there's so much uncertainty, as you know, in our ministries. I feel like I feel like the church is continuously, in many ways, trying to catch up with what's happening in the world and can't quite get ahead, if that makes sense. And so it feels that's the road trip that we're on. And I in some ways, I'm praying, Lord, allow us to get even close to where we were in some ways before, and trying to figure out how to move forward as a church, as a community, but also to help us navigate through the uncertainties that we just don't have any control, right? That we have no say about how it's all going to come together or move forward. So, I was just in a conference with First Call pastors in what they call our region 2. I think it's like all of California, Rocky Mountain area,
Arizona, Grand Canyon.
Yeah, Grand Canyon. Yeah. So there's so in that meeting though, what's interesting about the time I spent there is the discouragement, right? I think Brian was kind of talking about some of this too, but just the heaviness of being in ministry right now, and the fatigue of Zoom, for example, right? How that is real and honest, and how pastors are feeling it in their congregations and in their churches. And there is a division even within the church itself, those who are ready to kind of plow forward no matter what, and those who are saying, no, we're not ready to move forward. And already there, you begin to see the two different perspectives, the division, right, within even the church and our congregations. And so it's just tough. It's tough for pastors out there who are trying to figure out, how do we do this? How do I manage that? How do I lead that? And so, yes, that's where I'm at today, saying discouragement is real. It's here. It's among us. There's pastors who are feeling it. But at the same time, I'm saying, we must be alert. We must be awake. We must not fall asleep, because God is doing something. God is always doing something. And so how to remain awake in the midst of this season we're in, that kind of wants us to go to sleep, wants us to just kind of hide and come back out when it's all nice and sunny and shiny and warm. But I think we need to go through some more cold.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to share, which for what it's worth, it may not be useful. I mean, because different kinds of prayer are helpful for different people. One thing that's helped me when I'm feeling worn down, and I mean, Luther said, when he had a busy day, he took an extra hour for prayer. I have never achieved that Lutheran practice. But I really do like reading Psalms. And it used to be when I was younger, and also maybe when I had less things going on, I don't know, I would read the Psalm and I would kind of do what we're doing. I would pick a verse and I would say it over and over a few times, and I would kind of keep it with me through the day. But then I reached a point in my life where, like, I would pick a verse, like that would be so, take refuge in the shadow of your wings. And literally by noon, I could not remember it. Like literally, I mean, it would be so clear in my mind. It's so simple. How could you not remember that? And it would be like erased from my mind. So I started taking little slips of paper and just writing the little, the little phrase on it and keeping it with me. And throughout the day, just like every now and then reading that little slip of paper. And I find that really grounding. I mean, it's kind of like reorienting in the word. Like, I don't take the time like I would, like in a monastery where you pray, the hours, like, 6 or 9 times a day. But just having the little piece of paper with a little phrase on it, it's like some days it's like a lifeline. And so I just share that with you in case that might be helpful. And also, if any of you have any spiritual practices that are helpful for you in tough times that you'd like to share. I mean, if you don't, that's fine. If you do, I'm sure we'd all like to hear them.
For me, actually forcing myself to spend devotional time, to spend time reading scripture, to spend time in prayer. I hate to say that I have to force myself to do it, but to say, yes, you have 8 things that have to be done by the end of the day, but you need to do this to be able to do those things. And it's a challenge sometimes. It's the days where I rush through it so that I can cross it off my list of things that I've done are usually the days where things tend to not go well, good or good, or explode like a mess all over. And it's just, you really needed that time to center yourself to deal with all of this. And I hate to say that I have to force myself, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of my practices that I was maybe at the beginning of this year, maybe not last year, beginning of last year, but more the beginning of this year, was to not start my day by grabbing my cell phone. And what I meant by that is, the first thing I would do when I would wake up is grab my cell phone and start reading all the emails, that I forgot or I had just gotten, and it was not good. Or all the social media stuff that I had posted or someone, had posted. And it's like, I started my day with the phone and I said, no longer will I do that. And it was hard because I had conditioned myself to know I had this sense of, I don't want to miss what's on here. I need to get to it first thing in the morning. And then I realized, no, the first thing I need to get to is my time with God. And so, that's where that change happened. And then probably over the last 3 months, I said, I started feeling, I didn't feel so well, health wise. And I said, I need to start walking. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, I could spend time with God and I could do some exercise. Yes. So that's what's worked for me, probably for the last 3 to 4 months, just waking up early, doing my walk, doing some running. Now I'm doing some running, but spending time with God, praying, listening. And that's been very helpful. And at least my day now, I feel like it starts with presence, with God's presence. And then, and then all the emails, then I eventually get to them, but it's like, it's not the first thing.
I head up to the mountains on the hiking trails with the phone turned off. Well, on silent in case I fall and get hurt or something. I can be alone there, the clear blue sky, the mountains, the sun coming up. It's a great way to start.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all for sharing. It seems to me that whatever our plans are, and maybe we scared people off with having
with homework.
Not, but I'm even thinking myself, it's easy to make the plans and leave out the intentionality of setting aside time for prayer, for whatever, for practices that are spiritually strengthening for us. And it seems to me that, I mean, I would be guilty of that. I think what I've been thinking about with my plan, that wouldn't have been something I would say, well, I just assume that I wouldn't put it in the plan. But I think putting it in the plan makes it more likely to, to be an essential part of what we're doing, rather than, okay, if I have time for it, or first I'm checking my emails. And so, yeah.
I think you're right. We did probably scare some people away though. It's just a 90-day plan and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, it's a process.
Well, I don't know if this happened to others, but I actually had put this on my calendar for last week and realized when I couldn't get in, oops, I messed up. And because we had talked about 2 different dates and there might've been others that had the wrong date.
I think so too. But that, I even had a problem with that. I told Heidi, I said, Heidi, are we? I think it's next week, but it was. We do have a session tomorrow. We do have the third large session with,
Mhm.
with as well. But I will say some quick thoughts around the 90-day plan before either one of you or anybody wants to share about it. I begin by submitting to you that one of the things that's, I think, very viable and very important when we start preparing these 90-day plans is to consider a uh, historical analysis. The other way you can say that is to consider a contextual analysis. And for example, what do you know about the city where your church is located? Or the cities for Brian, who has multiple? Like, what do we know about them? Because the more we become aware of the history, for example, there's this guy named William Bradford who he talks about the city of Boston and how he considered it to be a blessing from God. He considered it to be a great tree whose roots spread throughout New England. And so he had kind of a vision for what Boston would look like. William Penn, who designed Philadelphia, talks about how he wanted the city to be a green garden town where every household would have room enough for a house, a garden, and a small orchard. So like every city has a history, it depicts a meaning. And like I know in my city, for example, city of Whittier, we're about 9 miles outside of downtown Los Angeles. I know that the First Nations people of my city, the Tongva, tribe, it stretched out through the whole LA basin. And I do know that they would sing their songs, and I know that they had they had all this artistry and artisans that would build these canoes out of long wooden planks. And so getting to know the natives, the First Nations people that inhabited our lands prior to being obviously colonized, right, by Spanish ships and all this. But in California, like just knowing, for example, there's a man named Pio de Jesus Pico, who was one of the first Mexican ranchers, Mexican-American ranchers at that time, that essentially had large farms and ranches. And at some point he was drinking way too much and sold that ranch to his neighbor. And then she went on to make it, this blossoming town. Eventually, that place became a place where this man named John Greenleaf Whittier wanted to start a Quaker colony, and so his vision was that this city that got established in 1887, now city of Whittier, would be a Quaker colony, a Christian community that would enhance the life of the Quakers. So just to kind of know a little bit of history about the city where you come from, but not only the good stuff, but I would say to you also the sins, right? The sins of the city, shall we say? Because the more we get to know where what are the sins of the city, the more we can speak into them and the more we are aware. So in other words, what I'm submitting to you is when you start creating your 90-day plans, you do want to consider a historical analysis. What is the history? What would people say to you? Who was there first? How did it come to be, that name? Who was involved? What is the history? And then the context. Second part is the context, a contextual analysis, which is like, you all know, I'm sure you all live in different cities. And I know here, right, people get lost when they think of Southern California because they get blinded by the sunshine, the beaches, the famous streets of Hollywood, In-N-Out burgers. I mean, this is the stuff people think of when they start thinking of California, but it creates a real challenge in our context. People on Sunday mornings or on weekends they got so much to do. They could go to the deserts, they could go to the beaches, they could go to the mountains, they could go wherever. I mean, it's just that kind of place to live. They could go to Disneyland when you can go to Disneyland. We can't do that anymore. But, you know, there were so many things that we are in some ways competing with. And so it's this reminder of also knowing your context and what are the things that we are, that we're dealing with. And some of us may not have all of that, but you may have other things, right? And so what are those ways to contextually do an analysis of your city and of your region to know, again, what are some ways to perhaps be more missional in our living? Cynthia Mo Lobita, she's a professor at PLTS up in Berkeley, and she has this wonderful book called Public Church. It's a very small read, but she speaks about how incarnational or missional living within the Lutheran Church is so ingrained in who we are. She talks about that the church is a people created by God in Christ who are empowered by the Holy Spirit, called and sent to bear witness of God's creative, redeeming, and sanctifying activity in the world, and to participate in that mission. And she says that baptism, right? Essentially through baptism, God makes a covenant with us, maybe Lutherans, calling us to live among God's faithful people. In other words, we are called to be in the midst of a mission that is centered for the well-being of all creation. And so it's a reminder to me, at least it reminds me of what the 90-day plan needs to, in some ways, embody. It doesn't have to be all of it, obviously, but how to bring, I would say, in our context, as contextual, historical, and I would say even theological analysis, right? As Lutherans, we have this certain theology, right, that we have in us, that we abide by, that we follow. And so how to be also aware of that theological, shall we say, even history, right? Obviously Martin Luther and all that. But the more we engage in that, I believe the more we will have a much more robust 90-day plan. I'll stop there. Any questions about these three things: historical analysis, contextual analysis, and then I would say Lutheran analysis or theological analysis? Because I think those three are huge parts when you start creating a 90-day plan, that somehow it needs to be, you know, somewhere in there, or at least it should somehow influence the way we're going to plan for the next 90 days. If we're not paying attention to the history, if there is a history of racism, for example, then don't you think that would matter to our 90-day plan? How we might speak about that, how we may actually present our 90-day plan with that kind of lens. So the more we can, and that's just one. I mean, I've heard of some cities like in Los Angeles, one of the big things was alcoholism and drugs. So these were two major ills of the city that it was the demise of LA. You know, so many cities became ghettos, became full of drugs and alcoholism. So these sins of our cities cannot be ignored when we are creating a 90-day plan. It just matters to acknowledge them, to know that they're real, because they have been there since for a long time. And so sometimes historical analysis is how many liquor stores are there in your city. Sometimes historical analysis is how many, I don't know, for example, those cashing places where you just cash a check, right? Yeah, because people are taking advantage of people financially. So it's just doing an analysis like that helps you to understand your city better and begin to understand the ills, the pains of your city.
Where you might have food deserts.
Yes.
Right. That's something we're looking at um, with my three churches.
Mhm, mhm.
Uh,
I know food banks right now are just overloaded with so many people in need, um, more than usual, right? I mean, and obviously the
Mhm.
pandemic has so much to do with that. So it's just a historical analysis. Just think of it. I mean, maybe it's just Googling it, your city, who named your city, why was it named after that name? Was there a vision for the city? There is still today in Whittier, for example, my city, a strong Quaker community, still to this day, because of what John Greenleaf did, Whittier did back in the early 1800s. So it, it's interesting. In fact, there's a university, Whittier College, which is a Quaker college. So do you see how these things play a role in understanding who we are and acknowledging the First Nations people, right? The acknowledging where these lands first and who inhabited these lands and how were they stolen? Because that's usually how it works, right? Someone came in and stole these lands. Now, California has a whole history, again, with the Mexican-American War as well. But yeah, so again, the more we get, I guess, informed of the history of our cities, then we could also see the ills of our church, the history of our churches. And that'd be interesting as well, right? Was there a strong Baptist influence? Was there a strong Lutheran presence? These kinds of things you begin to see as you do an analysis. Any questions or thoughts or comments around historical, theological, and contextual culture? In context, do you have any issues? I mean, not issues, but do you have any competing, groups or elements against the church? Weather, sometimes it's weather. It's too cold. We don't come to church during that time of the year, that kind of thing. Too hot.
yeah. Oklahoma is a very, very well churched area. I mean, I've heard it referred to as the buckle of the Bible Belt. But there's not a lot of grace being proclaimed in those churches. There, I don't want to say there's a Baptist church on every corner. It's probably every other. If it's got a stoplight, there's a Baptist church on one of the corners. And so being able to speak a different understanding of God's love, God's grace, and God's mercy is an opportunity here, but the theology of having to earn God's love, is tightly ingrained in the minds of people. The history of Oklahoma City has played a part in the three churches that I serve. Two of them were planted, one by the ALC, one by the LCA, about 55 to 60 years ago. One 2 miles north, one 2 miles west of the main gate of Tinker Air Force Base.
Huh.
The third church came to us through the Missouri Synod because an African descent family moved from Luther, Louisiana to Oklahoma City, wanted to worship at a Lutheran church, but they could not because of Jim Crow laws of the time.
Wow. Yeah.
And a Missouri Synod pastor was willing to meet with them in the family home. Then they rented a storefront. Then they built the church. Then they left with the with the 7X implosion. And at the same time as they're trying to fundraise to pay off the Missouri Synod who held the mortgage. The church was firebombed because they were active in supporting the sanitation workers who were on strike for a living wage. And so that's the background of three churches who they have said is their stated goal in this past year to become one. Now, unfortunately, of the two of the churches, one of them is a Fox News watching church.
Okay.
The other is a flipping between Fox and CNN. Which just shows how progressive they are.
Right.
And putting them all together in this time with everything else going on, it's dicey, but I keep coming back to at the core, we're all children of God. We will disagree on 100 different issues, but we're all children of God, and that trying to see each other as equals is a problem that's an undercurrent from the very founding of Oklahoma, because Oklahoma first was a place that the country said, okay, we'll put all the Native Americans here. Then at the end of the Civil War, it's like, no, we'll put all of the former slaves there. And then they discovered, oh, there's oil, so all right, we've already moved all these Native Americans, we've moved all these former slaves there, but we need to move them out of the way so that we can get the oil.
Of course, yeah.
And that's the state history of Oklahoma in 45 seconds.
It's interesting, Brian. I mean, trying to bring congregations together. Have you tried to do any maybe like familiarity or connection?
Prior to March 11th.
Exactly. Yep.
Actually, March 11th, that was a Wednesday in Lent. That was when the first basketball game got canceled. Actually, here in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
We were having a Lenten worship service where I had 50, maybe 55 people who were at dinner, then came in for a worship service from all three churches. It's a cover page on our Facebook page.
Okay.
And we've been getting together, and they have been connecting with each other. Many of the core group has been connecting with each other throughout this pandemic. And so when it's safe for us to actually be together, that's going to be great. It's just how long can we hold on to get there? Yeah, I know. It's starting to feel like at some point the Israelites had to start to go, now how long is it going to take us to get to that promised land?
Yeah, right.
And it's that's the challenge right now is how can we keep ourselves together when we have to stay apart?
Yeah, I think that's everybody's challenge right now. That's a great way of putting it. How can we keep ourselves together when we have to stay apart?
And it's tough to try to do with one church, but we're trying to bring the three of them together because this started because finances is what brought everybody to the table, and unfortunately, finance is going to make us move faster than we want to, because giving isn't keeping up with expenses, even more so than it was pre-pandemic.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Brian. I mean, I think we're all in that same kind of boat to some degree, because how long can you hold on, right? It's not forever, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And so I think that's some of the things we're seeing in many churches is how long is too long, right?
Mhm.
Because it may not necessarily, and then there's those churches who maybe are not as affected, right? Because it's a very different thing. If you're in a well-established congregation, obviously, it might be not that you don't have your issues and challenges, but it's a whole different ballgame when you're talking about momentum and togetherness and unifying. That needs time, but it also needs like in-person time. You know what I mean? Like it's
Mhm.
hard to do via Zoom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I hear you about that, and my prayers are with you, because that is, but it sounds very promising what you're talking about. I just need some time.
If we can get the three of them together, they complement each other. That they will either work well together, or it will be an implosion that will show up on the Richter scale. It's like a bad high school science experiment.
Yes.
Either it works or we set off all the fire alarms.
Right.
But maybe COVID and resource issues, will help clarify for things for in not that it's good, but maybe God can work something good through it.
It has. One of the things that we did early on was we started what we and I stole this from someone, care rings, phone circles, but we made sure to set up the phone circles so it was two people from Redeemer and two people from Ascension and two people from St. Mark, so that it took a while to get everybody to answer the phone from a phone number you weren't familiar with, but we're building those ties across the churches. It's just if we when we can actually get people in the same facility, that'll be the true test of how it will work, because people will know that they have friends, they have family at the other churches. They just don't exactly know who they are and can't recognize them by sight, and it's just so you're the person who I've been talking to on the phone for the past 8 months.
Yeah. Has anybody had taken a crack at the whole 90-day plan? Yeah. Anything you want to share, Barbara, maybe about how that process went or how's it going?
Well, actually, I've been in this process for a year, working with our mission developer, Louise, on 90-day planning.
Okay.
So there was already part of it in place.
Okay.
And it's always being tweaked because we don't know what COVID throws at us next.
Right.
But we're kind of in a place right now where much of it is just continue keeping on, continue those one-on-ones, continuing to invite our neighbors in whatever way we can. So I didn't really have to start at the beginning of the process to come up with this because we had so much of it in place.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you say you are in that 90-day plan today? Or has,
Where?
or would you say COVID somehow derailed some of that? Obviously, I'm sure.
I would say some of it was derailed, but most of this incorporated the reality of COVID because we had just started at the end of October having in-person outdoor worship. So we had, invitation for the neighbors to come to outdoor worship. We were able to have one of our next door neighbors in the neighborhood do a video presentation about what Holy Trinity Church has meant to her. And this was shown at the outdoor worship. She was not ready to come and join in the worship, but she did this virtually. It was translated into English from Spanish so that most of us could understand it.
Right.
And that was a big step to be able to do that and do it effectively in the midst of COVID. And then we also had that YouTube available on our Facebook page and also on the congregation's website. But part of this was we were going to intentionally invite our neighbors to our Wednesday Advent services. Some of them came last year, and someone sat with them and translated for them, and we were intentionally going to do that. Right now, we don't know whether we can even have those outdoor worship services, whether we can do it at all. And so that hasn't actually happened yet, but it might. I mean, it's on the plan, but it's right there. But at least for this coming week, our mission developer is going to be preaching, and his sermon will be translated to Spanish and available then on YouTube and on the congregation's website in the Spanish version. So that was all part of this plan, that some of that we've been able to meet for the month of November. So we had some things in line for December and January, but I don't want to do all the talking here.
No, it's good.
Okay.
Can I ask you, how did people respond to the outdoor video of the neighbor who you said present Spanish? What did the members say? What did people say after hearing that?
Well, first of all, we're discouraged for staying after the outdoor worship to speak to one another.
That's
We're
true.
supposed to go right to the cars, okay? But I'm the chair of that mission development program and was permitted at both the worship services to introduce the video and say, sort of give an overview of what we have done in the past year and a half in mission development, how we got to the point where we would have a person who doesn't speak English feel that she's part of the congregation. And tried to get that through. People told me that they found it to be really heartwarming when they would go afterwards and look at it we had English captioning for it, and it went over very well. And they're looking around and saying, where is she today? But she wasn't yet comfortable. Now, she did come to the Advent worship services last year when Luis would sit with her and translate with her.
Yeah, right.
But she hasn't been back. She'll come over and do work with us. I mean, if there are chairs to be carried, she's over there. Her husband will be over there and he'll work with us. But so anyway, there's much more to it. Yeah.
No, I like that you have someone though assisting with translation. I think that's a huge piece. If you can just have someone available to help someone. I mean, how could they join if they don't understand, right? I mean, how could they be participants if they can't even quit? So I love that you're doing that. I think that's a wonderful step.
Well, that's how we started this. We intentionally looked for someone in the team program is bilingual, could come and relate with these folks. And then Miguel Gomez Acosta is a member of the congregation, and we see him around from time to time.
Right.
He works very closely with our team.
Yes.
So
I love that. Yeah. Good. I'm glad to hear that. So I'm glad to hear some of this is already moving ahead for you. The 90-day plan. You're in the midst of it. You're trying some things. that's how it is, you know. And I would just say, remember, in our 90-day plans, some things will work really well and some things will not. I always tell the story of when we first started church planting, that we had this Mother's Day event, and we thought, oh, you know, free manicures, free pedicures, you know, moms will come and they'll love this, and there'll be food and everybody, you know, okay. So we're doing this, and you know, the time comes for the event. We pass out flyers, we invite people, and I think no one shows up, not one mom. And I remember our team sitting around the table saying, what happened? But in that moment, it was also a lesson to us that perhaps this event didn't work, but that doesn't mean the next event won't work. And we tried a different thing. And the next time we did a outdoor water slide gathering for the kids. And we had over 100 people from the neighborhood come to the water slide event. So you see, it's just like you try it, it works. You try it, it doesn't work. And you just keep going though, because you know that God is with you in this journey. And sometimes people will show up. And by the way, out of that event that 100 people came to, one family stayed in our church. By the way, that family is still with us to this day, you know, almost 12 years later since we planted that church. So, and is a leader in our church, by the way. So, you know, you have to remember these kind of things. God has a plan. God is working through it all. And even when it flops and fails, you keep going to the next thing because God is doing something always.
Yeah.
I see Jade. How you doing, Jade?
Hey, Jade.
Good to have you.
Hi, I'm glad I got to make it to this one. Doing a little bit more synod stuff in my synod, Southwest California, so I get my days mixed up. I've worked in the 90-day plan. I've done 2 already. This is my second one, and we have a concrete mission. I don't have it in front of me, but the mission that we have for our ministry is Redimidos, and it's an inclusive, multi-generational, multi-ethnic ministry. And our plan right now is definitely revolving around COVID. We have backyard church, and so we're trying to expand on how to open that up to the holidays. But we all agreed that because one, our county and our state's back on purple tier, so we can't do outdoor services again. And it's really hard to control the number of people that come for like Christmas services like Posadas and the Noche de Buena and Christmas Eve and Christmas services. So it's really hard to control the numbers. I can't ask. Culturally, RSVPs don't work. You know, it just doesn't. So we're trying to see what to do with that and where to go. And but we have a good following on Instagram. We have a good following on Facebook. And so we're thinking about doing like a prayer night, a live prayer night where we're just doing prayer, doing music, and doing something like that. We did start a community outreach program it's called the Diaper Drive. And we started a diaper drive to collect diapers to have a diaper pantry. And we now grew that into a monthly diaper pantry. And rather than having just our ministry host that diaper pantry, we part of the 90-day plan was to get other churches to host a drive and to support the pantry at our location. We didn't want to change the location because people now know, like I didn't have to post it I've had it now, I want to say this is the 3rd month we've had it. We have it the first Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. I try my best to keep with that time, but people show up like at 11:05 and I'm like, hold on, I don't know. So, which it's hard, you know, like when people come and they need something, it's hard to say no. And I only posted it in like one place on Facebook, and people are now, it's just word of mouth. 145 families. 145 children are receiving diapers
That is
because we do have a max now. We have a max of like 3 kids is
Okay.
per family is what I can do, because mathematically that's how many kids you can have probably in diapers at one time.
that makes sense. Yeah.
And that's a lot.
Yeah, and that's a lot. So we provide 40 diapers, a pack of wipes, as supplies last, because sometimes we don't have enough wipes.
Right.
So we supply at least 40 diapers per child in the size that they request. And it helped to have, according, like with the 90-day plan, it helped to have the 90-day plan like set up with this vision, because I'm not good at delegating work. Like I'm not good at that. And so the partners helping me in delegating the work, they're like, hey, like this is part of the plan and I know I can handle this follow-up portion. How about like, and this is the partner telling me, how about he follows up with that? And so it's perfect because I can see it. It's a visual aspect of it. I started making, I don't know if this is too much work, but I started making a 90-day plan for each ministry.
Okay.
So a plan for like the diapers,
Yeah.
and super simple because I was going too deep into it, but like a 90-day plan for the diaper ministry.
Okay.
I have a 90-day plan for my leadership group,
Okay. Yep.
and then a 90-day plan for the ministry as a whole, like the people, the congregation. And it's helped narrow down our focus.
Right. Yeah. I like that. I mean, so you've taken it into each ministry or social service that you're giving to the community and broken down into a 90-day plan for each one of those, even your leadership, it sounds like. Yeah. That's really intentional. That's deeply intentional.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Right?
That's a good.
It helped.
What do you think, Heidi? I mean,
I think that's wonderful. And I would think for the leadership, for each aspect, that will be really helpful because it clarifies what everyone's going to focus on in a specific time frame. I think that's a beautiful plan.
I was a part of my team ministries I'm in team program also. Part of the team studies is like the homework is contextual. And in my Pauline epistles class or Pauline epistles class, they were like, hey, like you have to put together a project. And Barbara, I'm in the same cohort with Luis. I don't know if he's told you. Yeah.
No,
So
I
Luis
didn't know
and
that. Yeah.
we're in the same, there's no one else like his position and mine. Like there's no one, like we've tried to find each other, like, so we collaborate a lot. And part of our work was, part of our work was to create an assignment, a sermon, a Bible study, something that's contextual to what we've learned and to our ministry. I was like, well, I keep going too broad on the 90-day. I keep going too, like, I wanted to connect all these pieces and putting too much detail. And I felt like making those plans for each ministry, like narrowed it down.
It reminds me in community organizing, like people can think, oh, that's too much work. Like someone could hear you saying that and say, I can't even do one 90-day plan. She's doing, I actually think in the end that saves time. I mean, there's more, you're putting a little more effort into the planning, but then it will actually, I think, save you time in the long run.
That's how I feel. That's how I felt before. Like it was too much, and now that's how I feel. Yeah. Thanks.
That's great.
And I would say if you like, I love your awareness, right, of yourself, because if you know that you're not a delegator, how to find someone who can be that person for you is what I would suggest. How can you find someone around you that can be bold enough to say, Pastor Jade, you should ask this person to do that? Or do you want me to ask that person if they can do that? So just finding those people around you who can be of assistance for you and keep you in some ways, make your leadership more well-rounded when you have people like that who can do that and say that and speak truth into you, I would suggest. So, so just some thoughts.
If only I can find someone to go ask for money for me. That's the next one. Like that I have a hard time. And then this is a multicultural. I mean, can I ask a question? I know we're talking about the 90-day, but I'd like to ask a question. Money is a really hard subject, right? And coming up with a new ministry, it's hard to talk about money. And I wanted to do like a study on stewardship later on. Like right now, I'm doing a study on just growth, who we're going to reach, setting the bar, using my best friend's book that she wrote. And so just kind of like branching it out, because I don't want to just put the basket out and say like, hey, we need to start doing offering. We need to start doing this. So it was suggested to me that I reach out to ministries and churches in my conference to ask for support. And I am the only Latina in the conference. Okay, just FYI. We are the only bilingual ministry in our county. We're not the only one in our synod. There's a few other ones, but it's hard. It's hard to be the only one to ask for money. And I feel like I'm begging. I feel like I'm groveling, but others have told me, Jade, you're a church planter. You need to ask. Like, that's just part of the role. Like, that's just what it is. So how do you, what suggestions are there for being a mission, for asking others for money, and what's the expectation in return?
You want me to tackle that, Heidi, or you?
Well, maybe we could both tackle it. Why not you start?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. My first thoughts are, I love the idea of stewardship and having some kind of teaching around that. And remember, stewardship it's everything, right? God wants all of us, not just our wallets, not just our money. And so beginning with this idea that everything belongs to God and we just get to use and to manage it and steward it. So but I think formation is very essentially what you're describing as spiritual formation. And I think, over the years, I would just go back to this. I think spiritual formation is so important. If we're not teaching, if we're not teaching our people and letting them understand how stewardship works, then how do we expect them to give? How do we expect them to be participants of giving? And now the next thing I'll say is, in spiritual formation, you also help people to be able to be willing to risk, right? To risk stuff, or at least, let me put it the other way, that they don't have fear, and removing the fear. So I never seen people who give who have still fear of giving. There is this fear, and especially in our Latino culture, I will say there is this fear of scarcity, of thinking I don't have enough to give. And so this is a very big hurdle that we need to help our families and individuals realize. It's safety. Once you get beyond food and shelter as a human, what are the other needs? Well, you want to feel like you are safe. You want to feel like you belong and like there's meaning to what you're doing. So can you help people feel safe to give? Can you help people feel like there's a meaning? Why am I giving out of my money that I barely have any? And then lastly, how can I belong? In other words, how am I invested in this? So I think spiritual formation is the best way to start when you start talking about money, but I would talk about it in a larger context, stewardship. And again, in the stewardship conversation, you want to speak the two differences between abundance and scarcity. Abundance and scarcity. There are two mentalities, and most people are in scarcity. Especially people who are maybe low income or, blue collar work. This is the reality. And then it's helping with faith, right? Faith formation, right? Do you have faith in that God will be with you, even if you start giving whatever, $100 a month towards the church, that God will supply your every need. So I think you're on the right track when it comes to spiritual formation. That's the best place. And then the next thing I would say is spiritual formation for yourself. And so what I mean by that is, how do you view money? What is your history with money? Because let me tell you something, it all begins with how we grew up. Like, what was your first experience with money? You've heard of some people who grow up and say, I never thought about money. The car just showed up. The food was always there. The rent was always there. So, and then there's other people who say, no, I had to work hard, or I had to go help my mom or do this, or my dad, to make sure we even made rent for the month. So how do we personally view money? Because that will affect the way we communicate money to our churches. And there is healthy ways to view it and unhealthy ways. And so again, as the leader of the ministry, it's so important that you are aware and in tune with how you have grown up with money and what's your history, and maybe financial autobiography out there. There's some people who've been writing about this out there, who have books about this, so that you can read and then start doing a self-analysis, like, oh, I never thought about money that way. And perhaps that's why it's hard for me to talk about money. So I would start with those two formations for your people and for yourself, maybe for yourself first and then people. Maybe it'll be much better. And then the last thing I'll say, sorry, I spoke already too much, is if you are giving, to be vulnerable with that. To say, people, like, I'm the pastor of this church and I am a participant. I'm participating in giving. Some people are bold enough to say how much they're giving. You know, I'm giving $500 a month to this. Would you meet me there? Would you think about, you know what I mean? Like, I know this is bold. I know this is crazy for some people, but I'm just trying to tell you, this is where you can also be it could be used for good.
So I wanted to address the other aspect of I think you were bringing up the issue of asking for other congregations to partner with you. Is that right? Was that right, Jade?
It was asking for others to help fund.
Other churches,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
rather than thinking about it as kind of begging, like you're offering them a special giving opportunity. And I do think that people, you know, if they're not in a real scarcity mode themselves, you know, they want to make a difference. And you're giving them an opportunity to, you know, to make a difference. I would say it would be helpful to have a one page that, you know, it's like, would you like to, and then maybe 3 or 4 things that relate to your ministry. Would you like to invest in XYZ, or would you like to help, you know, in a time of division, you know, would you like to see people to come together? Or I don't know, however, whatever the things are of your mission. And then you could say, you know, here's an opportunity for you, partner with us. And I would even give a few giving levels, like, you know, $100 will blah, 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 you know, or be a partner at whatever a month, or, you know, but give them a few options. One page, because that's easy. It's both easy to communicate it and it's easy for the person to follow. It's not too overwhelming. But think of it, even though you have to kind of trick yourself in your mind. I say this because I had to do that. But like, you are giving an opportunity to them to, and a lot of people want to do that. And in fact, if you don't ask them, they're going to be getting this holiday season so many solicitations in the mail of people, you know, asking for their money to make a difference, you know, give money for this and you'll be helping that. And many of those things, some might be good, some might not, but they're probably big, you know, big organizations that are sending out these mailings. In your case, it can be a lot more localized and hands-on, and it's within the synod, and there can be real connection and follow-up and relationship. So that's what I would suggest to think about for that.
Jade, also some of the congregations near you may have endowment funds that are required to give distributions on a quarterly basis. You might want to be in contact with those.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Sure.
And some of the you know, I'm getting a bunch of those mailers that Heidi was talking about, and I actually think that NPR and those radio stations have a great model to follow. If you give this amount, we can do this. Your your donation
That's what
of
I meant. Like X amount will enable this. Yes.
and, and and if you can put that right next to a picture, especially a picture of an adorable young child, that melts hearts. Those move checkbooks.
Sorry, everybody.
I just had one more a question actually for you, Brian, to follow up. Early on, you mentioned that in your synod, which made sense to me, there are not a lot of Lutheran churches, and so there's not a lot of people that you can draw on to give you a break. But I don't remember. Are you online?
Yeah. Well,
if you're online, you could have a month of preachers, who you could have. I mean, you could have preachers from anywhere in the country.
Unfortunately, each of my three churches has chosen a different way to worship.
Oh.
Online parking lot, spaced out in the sanctuary.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so you have to do.
Okay.
Oh, wait, that's.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
No, but I can see that's not working for you either. So you have to do 3 different kinds of sermons every week.
The way I've described it to them is they're all getting this. They're all getting the same basic potato salad sermon. Just each serving has different spices.
Okay, well that doesn't help then to have a guest preacher from somewhere else in the country.
That's we were able to do that this summer when we were when we were just one service online, and we're going to do that for the Sunday after Christmas. The Synod is doing a service of lessons and carols that we're moving to the Sunday the 27th, but unfortunately, what I might be able to do, and we're working on moving some audio visual equipment around. I might be able to have someone preach virtually, and I just have to preside basically over
communion. Well, that would give you a little bit of a break.
And we are exploring those opportunities.
Good.
Hey, for Jade, I don't know if this was mentioned, but if you go and ask for, if you're going to churches to talk about your ministry, people will give for 3 reasons. If there is a need, like an actual, like you said, hey, we need $5,000 to get diapers. People will give towards that. Other people will give because of your mission. And, we want to be a inclusive, grace-centered community, whatever it is, right? And then other people will give because it's just you, because they like you and they want to support you. But I would say that wherever you go to speak and share, bring someone with you, that person who tells the story, so good. I remember I did the same thing in church planting. We would go to a few of our communities, and I would bring one of our speakers that she was so simple and so humble and so beautifully would speak. And she would always end that, testimony by being by weeping, because she was so thankful for the opportunity of being a part of our community. That just did all the work in the people's hearts, and people gave towards the mission that they saw and they heard, right? This looks like something I would want to support. So whenever you go out there, find someone who could tell the story very well. I know, I'm sure you can, but who's that other person who can really tell a story? And then I think God will meet you there. It's 12:31.
Yes.
So we have reached our time and our limit, but wonderful conversation today. I appreciate
Good.
one of you sharing a little bit about where you are and what's going on. So do we have our next meeting scheduled? I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, let's get on the same page. I don't know.
If I remember correctly, it was either the 9th, it is the 9th, December 9th.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah, that's what I think we said. So December 9th, same time, same place,
Okay.
same channel. Okay, so I'll see you all December 9th. Of course, continue to work on our 90-day plans, but I think what we could try to tackle next time is perhaps more conversations around multicultural ministry and how to continue to perhaps contextualize what we are doing in our settings. It's very different, right? Every setting is different, but at least we can spend some time asking some questions about that setting, maybe how Heidi and I could speak into what you're thinking of doing, and maybe we could even, spend some time together analyzing that together. Shall we pray?
Yes.
All right. Anybody feel like they want to lead us out in prayer? Okay, then I'll just lead us. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Dear Lord, we are so thankful for your love and grace that is with us everywhere we go. On this day, our prayers go out to those who are in need, suffering. We think of those in Central America, specifically in Nicaragua and Colombia and South America, dealing with these hurricanes and winds and storms. The videos that are out there just showing how there's so much destruction. We pray that you would come and be with them today, that you would bring your comfort and rest and protection over all those who are today affected by these hurricanes. I also pray for those in Thailand, those who are trying to seek democracy and the freedom to speak out and to hold the monarchy accountable for things. I pray that you would be with them as well as they protest, as they speak out, that you would bless their movement as they're trying to bring more of your love and grace into this world, honestly. So I just pray for our country, all the different states that are just continually rising and going up in count and in fear and in doubt. I just pray that you would bring your comfort upon them today, your healing touch, that you would remind them that they are not alone. Jesus, you told your disciples, do not fear, for I am with you always until the end. So today, that is our prayer and that is our hope. And I just bless the ministry of all my colleagues here and friends, that they would continue to move forward, that you would anoint their steps, that you would anoint their words, that as they would speak and as they would preach and as they would lead, that they would be that it would be soaked in justice, that it would be drenched in righteousness, because that is what we want. We want your justice to flow like waters. We want your righteousness to go down and be this ever-ending stream. We just pray that for our communities today. And we bless all those who are not here. May you be with them as well. Bless the rest of our day. And we give you thanks. We pray for this in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Blessings to you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. All of you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.